Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Dear students, welcome back. Business Economics ECO 400 के lecture number 25 में खुश आमदीद. पहले की तरह we'll try to revise the previous lecture, what we have learned in the previous lecture, and then we proceed for today's lecture. So we start by revising the previous lecture. So we studied that we were discussing the aggregate demand and aggregate supply curve and try to bring equilibrium in the economy. So we discussed the second part of the aggregate demand and aggregate supply in the economy. That was about the long shape of the aggregate supply curve in the long run and in the short run, and then we have tried to determine the equilibrium in the economy by using both of these two concepts, that is aggregate demand and aggregate supply. So as we learned in the previous lecture that in the long run the aggregate supply curve is vertical, right? So long run में जो supply curve है vertical होता है because of given that we assume that in the long run real variables does not change, so aggregate supply is given in the long run. The short run aggregate supply curve is positively sloped or upward sloping. Now we explain there are the why short run supply curve is upward sloping. So we used three theories that explain the reason why we have upward sloping short run supply curve, right? So we have discussed about the misperception theory, the sticky wage theory, and then the sticky price theory. So with the help of these theories we have explained that the short run aggregate supply curve is positively sloped. And then we have learned that events that alter the economy ability to produce output will shift the short run aggregate supply curve, right? Also the position of the short run aggregate supply curve depends on the expected price level, right? So whenever there is change in the expected price level, this affects the aggregate supply in the economy. One of the possible cause of economic fluctuation is the shift in aggregate. उसके बाद हमने बात की थी what are the possible causes of economic fluctuation in the economy. So we said that so there are two main causes of economic fluctuation. दो रीज़न हैं, दो वजूहात हैं जो कि बायस बनती हैं economic fluctuation का किसी economy में. पहली जो cause है जिसकी हमने बात की, that is the shift or the change in aggregate demand, right? Still due to change in aggregate demand or shift in the aggregate demand curve, there is short-term fluctuation or fluctuation in the economy. Second possible cause of fluctuation जिसकी हमने बात की, that is about the possible cause of economic fluctuation is the change in aggregate supply in the economy. So whenever there is a change or shift in the aggregate supply in the economy, that will bring economic fluctuation in the country or in the economy. And lastly, this की हमने बात की थी, we talked about stagflation. Stagflation is a situation, is a period of falling output and rising prices. So when output is falling, prices are rising, so that situation, इस सूरत हाल को हम stagflation का नाम देते हैं, and we said that so there is stagflation in the economy. So this was all about the previous lecture. Now we'll come to today's topic for discussion. We'll continue with the same concept of aggregate demand and aggregate supply, and what we are planning to do here that we would like to see the influence of monetary and fiscal policies on aggregate demand. So how these two demand management policies, which is the fiscal policy and the monetary policy, can change aggregate demand in the economy. So this is the topic of discussion for today's lecture. तो हम देखेंगे कि किस तरह से अगर monetary policy variables में change आती है, fiscal policy variable में change आती है, and that affect in turn the aggregate demand in the economy. Now the sequence of the lecture is like we start with the theory of liquidity preferences. So we'll try to explain this theory in the first part of the lecture, and then second part we'll see that how the change in money supply affect the that is one of the tool of monetary policy. Change in money supply affect the aggregate demand in the economy. Similarly, we'll see that how changes in government purchases or taxes, which are the tools of fiscal policy, can affect or alter the एग्रीगेट डिमांड इन द इकोनॉमी। तो तीन चीज़ों पे आप बात करेंगे आज के लेक्चर में। सबसे पहले हम थ्योरी ऑफ लिक्विडिटी प्रेफरेंस की बात करेंगे, व्हाट इज़ दैट थ्योरी एंड हाउ वी कैन रिलेट it to the aggregate demand, and then we'll talk about the change whenever there is a change in monetary policy of the country, like as we know that there are two main tools of monetary policy are the money supply and the interest rate. So government can change money supply, government can use monetary policy by adopting any of the tool, and then accordingly can affect the aggregate demand and supply in the economy. Similarly, तीसरे जो पार्ट में हम बात करेंगे, how the fiscal policy or the parameter of fiscal policy can affect the aggregate demand in the economy. This is the sequence of the today's lecture. We'll start first about the aggregate demand, as we learned that many factors influence aggregate demand besides monetary and fiscal policy. There are so many other factors that can also affect the aggregate demand in the economy except the monetary and fiscal policy. In particular, desired spending by household and firms, right? So the spending, required spending, desired spending by household and firms can determines the overall demand for goods and services in the economy. So when desired spending increases, when there is change in desired spending or increases, it will change the aggregate demand or demand of goods and services in the economy and causes short-term fluctuation in output and employment. So जब कभी there is change in spending of individuals, households and firms, of course there is a change in a shift in aggregate demand curve that will bring a change in aggregate demand, that will bring a fluctuation, short-term fluctuation in the economy, and this because of this fluctuation, because of this change, and there will be a change in output and employment in the economy. And monetary and fiscal policy are sometimes used to offset these fluctuations, these shifts, and stabilize the economy. तो हमने ये कहा कि मॉनेटरी पॉलिसी सिर्फ ऐसा टूल नहीं है या फिस्कल पॉलिसी ऐसा टूल नहीं है जो कि एग्रीगेट डिमांड को इफेक्ट कर सकता है. देयर आर सो मैनी अदर फैक्टर्स दैट कैन अल्टर, दैट कैन चेंज द एग्रीगेट डिमांड ऑफ गुड्स एंड सर्विसेज इन द इकोनॉमी. और उसमें हमने बात की इफ सपोज देयर इज चेंज इन द डिजायर्ड स्पेंडिंग ऑफ हाउस होल्ड्स एंड फर्म्स, right? So this can shift the aggregate demand curve, right? So this can change the overall demand of goods and services in the economy. So when there is a change in the overall demand of goods and services in the economy, this will bring a shift in the aggregate demand curve, right? So जब shift आती है aggregate demand curve की, so this is sort of short-term fluctuations in the economy, and because of this fluctuation and there is a change in the level of output and employment in the economy, right? So monetary and fiscal policies are used sometime to offset these fluctuations, offset these changes, as these shifts are which are because of some other factors, and the government tries to stabilize the economy by using monetary and fiscal policy. How monetary policy influences aggregate demand. So as we said that we are going to talk about the two policies and how these two policies can affect or change the aggregate demand in the economy. हमने ये सीखा है पिछले 2 लेक्चर्स में कि aggregate demand का जो slope है that is downward sloping, and that downward sloping demand curve is because of 3 main reasons, जिसमें हमने बात की it is because of wealth effect. वेल्थ इफेक्ट में हमने कहा था कि अगर प्राइस में कमी बेशी आती है तो दिस चेंज द रियल income of the consumer or real purchasing power of the consumer, and then in turn affected their spendings, right? So because of that their demand of goods and services goes down or goes up. So this can shift the aggregate demand, and that effect is known as the wealth effect. उसके बाद हमने कहा था कि एक और रीज़न है इसके डाउनवर्ड स्लोपिंग की, इंटरेस्ट रेट के कम या ज़्यादा होने से इट कैन चेंज दी डिमांड फॉर गुड्स एंड सर्विसेज. सपोज इंटरेस्ट रेट बढ़ता है, सो क्या होगा, इंटरेस्ट बढ़ने से इन्वेस्टमेंट कम होगी, इन्वेस्टमेंट कम होगी तो डिमांड फॉर गुड्स एंड सर्विसेज कम हो जाएगी और डिमांड फॉर कर्व लेफ्ट और इनवर्ड शिफ्ट हो जाएगा. तो दिस इज नोन. एंड द थर्ड इफेक्ट जिसकी हमने बात की, दैट कैन एक्सप्लेन द रीज़न व्हाई एग्रीगेट डिमांड कर्व आर डाउनवर्ड स्लोपिंग, उसकी हमने बात की, दैट इज द exchange rate effect, right? So whenever there is change in exchange rate, real exchange rate, so this can affect the overall demand of goods and services in the economy. Like if we say that net exports are a function of real exchange rate, and whenever there is, if real exchange rate depreciates, that your exports or the export of that country will become cheaper and exports will increase, and then imports will be reduced and demand for goods and services goes down, right? So we can say that, so there are three factors that can explain, जैसा कि हमने पहले भी ये सीखा था कि तीन ऐसे फैक्टर, तीन ऐसी वजूहात हैं जो कि एक्सप्लेन करती हैं कि वाई डिमांड, एग्रीगेट डिमांड कर्व इज डाउनवर्ड स्लोपिंग, और वो तीन चीज़ें हैं, वेल्थ इफेक्ट, interest rate effect and the exchange rate effect. And now we'll come to the try to explain the liquidity preference theory, and then try to link up this theory with the aggregate demand of the economy. Keynes was an economist. Basically, Keynes developed the theory of liquidity preferences. He developed this theory in order to explain what factors determine the economy's interest rate. So he developed a theory of liquidity preferences in order to explain what are the factors that determine the interest rate in the economy. According to the theory, the interest rate adjusts to balance the supply and demand for money. Now, इस थ्योरी के मुताबिक इंटरेस्ट रेट जो है बेसिकली वो एडजस्ट करता है, बैलेंस करता है, तवाज़ुन लाता है बिटवीन सप्लाई ऑफ मनी को और डिमांड फॉर मनी को. As we know that money supply can be changed or can be increased or decreased with the help of following tools. तीन तरह के टूल हैं जो कि स्टेट बैंक, फेडरल गवर्नमेंट यूज़ कर सकती है to increase or decrease money supply in the economy. And what are those tools? First of tool is open market operations. So money supply can be changed, can be increased or decreased with the help of open market operations. So what is open market operation? Government can sell bonds, government can purchase bonds. So if government want to increase money supply in the economy, so they will purchase bond from the market, from the banks, right? In this way they can increase money supply, and similarly if they want to reduce money supply, they can sell their bonds to the individuals, to the market, in the market, or to the banks, right? So second is change in the required reserve ratio, right? So each of the commercial bank is required to put some of their deposits with the commercial bank in fixed percentage, right? So government can, if the federal government or the central bank want to change the money supply in the economy, they can do this by changing the reserve required ratio or requirement ratio, right? तो इस तरह से मनी सप्लाई को कम या ज़्यादा कर सकते हैं. तीसरा जो इम्पोर्टेंट फैक्टर है जिससे स्टेट बैंक या फेडरल बैंक जो है, फेड बैंक जो है, दैट कैन कंट्रोल द मनी सप्लाई इन द इकोनॉमी इज द डिस्काउंट रेट, right? So by changing the discount rate, government can bring a change in the money supply in the economy, right? Because as we know that it is most of the time interest rate is fixed. It is fixed by the federal government, so the quantity of money supply does not depend on the interest rate. Since interest rate basically is determined by the federal government, as is decided by the federal government, it is fixed by the federal government or by the State Bank of Pakistan. So the quantity of money supply does not depend on the interest rate in the country or in the economy. The fixed money supply is represented by a vertical supply curve, right? So we can say that if it is fixed, it is given by the federal government, by the State Bank of Pakistan, this is the level of money supply in the economy, we can say that the money supply curve will be vertical, right? Now money demand, because money market has two sides. On the one side, as we said, is the money supply, the other side is the money demand. तो money demand basically is determined by several factors. बहुत सारे factors हैं जो कि money demand को affect कर सकते हैं. What are those factors that can affect the money demand in the economy? Now according to the theory of liquidity preference, one of the most important determinant or factor is the interest rate. So सबसे पहला जो important factor है जो कि money demand को determine करता है in the economy is the interest rate, right? So whenever there is change in the interest rate, this will affect the money demand, right? Suppose if there is increase in interest rate in the economy, what will happen? जब interest rate बढ़ेगा तो people will try to deposit their money with the banks, right? So instead of holding with themselves, so demand for money कम हो जाती है जब interest rate बढ़ता है, and vice versa. People choose to hold money instead of other assets that offer high interest rate of return because money can be used to buy goods and services. Now, opportunity cost of holding money is the interest rate, right? So if the opportunity cost, if the people or the individual in the economy hold money with themselves, and then its opportunity cost is the interest rate, and that could be earned on interest earning assets also instead of holding money with themselves. An increase in the interest rate raises the opportunity cost of holding money. So when it raises the opportunity cost of money, of course, then it would be beneficial for the individual, for the firms to deposit their money in the banks or to utilize that money for those assets, for purchasing those assets which are interest bearing assets, right? So interest earning assets, right? So if real interest rate in the economy in the country goes up, जब बढ़ता है इंटरेस्ट रेट बढ़ता है तो अपॉर्चुनिटी कॉस्ट ऑफ होल्डिंग मनी जो है वो बढ़ जाती है. अगर आप जितना ज़्यादा पैसा रखेंगे उतनी आपको ज़्यादा इंटरेस्ट उसको अपनी जो अपॉर्चुनिटी कॉस्ट से सेक्रीफाइस कर रहे हैं अपनी अर्निंग्स वो ज़्यादा हो जाती है. तो जब सेक्रीफाइस ज़्यादा होती है, अपॉर्चुनिटी कॉस्ट ज़्यादा होती है, सो देन इंडिविजुअल प्रेफर to buy those assets which can earn interest rate like bonds. They can purchase bonds or they can deposit their money with the banks so that can earn maximum returns on their deposits. So as a result, the quantity of money is reduced with the increase in interest rate. तो हमने ये conclude का one of the most important determinants of demand is the interest rate. तो interest rate में जब कमी बेशी आती है तो because this is the opportunity cost of holding money, so this can affect the demand for money by the individual, by the firms, by the household. अगर if there is an increase in the interest rate in the country and the economy, so this will increase the opportunity cost of holding money. So as a result, the demand for money goes down or is reduced. Now we have discussed the two sides separately, the money supply and the money demand of the money market separately. Now we can combine these two forces together, that is the money supply and the money demand, and try to bring equilibrium in the money market. अगर आप दोनों forces को जिनको हमने अलग-अलग explain किया है पिछली दो स्लाइड में, सबसे पहले हमने money supply की बात की. Government can change money supply by using either open market operation or by using discount rates or by required reserve ratio, right? So they can change the money supply, but most of the time it is fixed by the Fed, so it is given. So we can say that money supply curve is vertical, right? सेकेंड हमने साइड जो मनी मार्केट की दूसरी साइड की बात की, दैट इज़ द मनी डिमांड. और हमने कहा कि मनी डिमांड कैन डिपेंड ऑन मैनी फैक्टर्स, बहुत सारे फैक्टर्स पर डिपेंड कर सकती है, एंड वन ऑफ द इम्पॉर्टेंट फैक्टर इज़ द इंटरेस्ट रेट. हमने ये कहा कि जब इंटरेस्ट रेट इज़ आल्सो द अपॉर्चुनिटी कॉस्ट ऑफ होल्डिंग मनी, राइट? तो एज इफ़ यू होल्ड मोर मनी यू हैव टू सेक्रीफाइस मोर returns on your money. So if you deposit that money in the banks or buy, purchase those assets which are interest earning assets, right? So with the increase in interest rate, what will happen to the demand for money? So the demand for money goes down. So we have discussed two sides of the money market separately. Now if we combine bring these two sides of money markets together, and will determine the equilibrium in the money market. So according to the theory of liquidity preferences, the interest rate adjusts to balance the supply of money and the demand for money. So there is one interest rate called the equilibrium interest rate in the economy, which is at which the quantity of money supplied is equal to the quantity of money demanded, right? So by bringing these two forces together, we can determine an interest rate which is the equilibrium interest rate in the economy, and at this interest rate we can say that we can conclude that the quantity demand for money is equal to the quantity supply of money. Equilibrium in the money market so assumes the following about the economy, right? So when we are explaining the equilibrium in the money market, so and trying to determine that interest rate is one of the parameter that determines equilibrium in the money market, and it is the interest rate with which money demand is equal to the money supply. So we have to assume the following about the economy when we are explaining this equilibrium with the help of liquidity preference. तो जब liquidity preference के जरिए हम explain कर रहे हैं money market में equilibrium को, तो हमें कुछ चीज़ें assume करनी पड़ती हैं, and one is the price level is stuck at some level. So price level is stuck at some level, prices are sticky at some level. For a given price level, the interest rate adjusts to the balanced money demand, and then correspondingly we can determine the level of output responds to the demand for goods and money. So we can link these two forces, these two factors, which is the demand for money and money supply, with the aggregate demand, that can affect, both of these factors can affect the output level in the economy. And then of course when output is affected or changed with the help of these two, by these two variables, so that responds to the aggregate demand of goods and services in the economy, right? So हम ये कह सकते हैं कि जब आप explain करते हैं money market में equilibrium को by the money demand and money supply, तो you can, these two parameters or variable can alter or affect the output, and that is correspondingly can affect the aggregate demand of goods and services in the economy. Now we'll try to explain the equilibrium in the money market with the help of diagram जो कि आपको सामने नज़र आ रहा है. जैसा कि हमने कहा कि since money supply is fixed by the Fed, it is given, so we have a vertical money supply curve, and as we said that there is an inverse relationship between interest rate and demand for money. Interest rate is one of the main factor or the determinants of demand for money in the economy. So we have downward sloping demand for money curve. On y-axis we are measuring interest rate in the economy, on x-axis we are measuring quantity of money demanded, quantity of money supplied, right? So we have downward sloping money demand curve because of the negative or inverse relationship between interest rate and quantity demand for money, and we have a vertical slope supply curve, money supply curve. So both of these two curves intersect each other at a point, like suppose if we say that this is a point E, so E is the point which determines equilibrium in the money market, and the interest where this is the point where both these two curves are intersecting. At this point, quantity demand for money is equal to the quantity demand for money supply, and when these two are equal, at this point we have interest rate, which is the equilibrium interest rate in the economy. Correspondingly to this equilibrium interest rate, we have a quantity fixed by the Fed, or quantity demand and supply of money. Now why we call this point an equilibrium point in the money markets, and we can explain by taking two other points on the curve. Suppose we take another point like point A. Now what is happening at point A? Point A पे क्या सूरत हाल है? Now if you look at the point A, demand for money is more than the demand for the supply of money in the market. Demand for money at this point, point A, demand for money is greater than the supply of money. जब demand ज़्यादा होती है, तो what will happen to the interest rate? Interest rates start increasing, right? जब interest rate बढ़ना शुरू हो जाता है, as we know that interest rate और मनी डिमांड का इन्वर्स रिलेशनशिप है, तो जब इंटरेस्ट रेट बढ़ना शुरू होता है तो मनी डिमांड कम होना शुरू हो जाती है, एंड मनी मार्केट मूव्स टुवर्ड्स पॉइंट ई, टुवर्ड्स द इक्विलिब्रियम पॉइंट दैट डिटरमिन्स इक्विलिब्रियम इन द मनी मार्केट. Similarly, if we can consider another point, and like point B in this diagram, that now what is happening at point B, at point B, if you look at that money supply is greater than money demand, right? Money demand is less, money supply is more. So when money supply is more, money demand is less, interest rate in the economy start falling down. जब interest rate कम होता है तो हमें पता है कि interest rate का money demand के साथ inverse relationship है. So with the increase in interest rate in the economy, so what will happen? The money demand starts increasing. जब money demand बढ़ती है, money demand बढ़ेगी तो the money market moves towards point E. So we can say that money market is in equilibrium at a point where the demand for money is equal to the demand for supply of money, right? So if we have discussed the two extreme cases, if demand for money is more than the supply of money, so what will happen? Interest rate में कमी आती है और money demand, इंटरेस्ट रेट बढ़ना शुरू हो जाता है और मनी डिमांड कम होने से इकोनॉमी मूव करती है towards the equilibrium point. Similarly, if money supply is greater than money demand, what will happen? The interest rate कम होना शुरू हो जाता है और मनी डिमांड बढ़ना शुरू हो जाती है और इकोनॉमी मूव करती है from point B to E and comes back again to the point E, where the money market is in equilibrium, and at this point demand for money is equal to the supply of money, and this is the point where the money market is in equilibrium, and this determines the equilibrium interest rate in the economy and determine the equilibrium quantity demand for money and equilibrium quantity supply of money in the economy. And the downward slope of aggregate demand curve, so we can link up this liquidity preference theory with the aggregate demand curve, or the slope of aggregate demand curve, which is downward sloping, and the price level is one of the determinant of the quantity of money demand. At higher price level, as we said that earlier in previous slides, that money demand has many factors that can many determinants. We have discussed one of the determinants was the interest rate. We can say that, and the other determinant is a price and the price level or the inflation in the economy. The price level is one of the determinant of quantity demand for money. Now if suppose prices goes up if there is an increase in the inflation rate in the economy, what will happen? It increases the quantity demand for money for any given interest rate. So it will raise the demand for money because प्राइसेस के बढ़ने से लोगों की परचेजिंग पावर कम हो जाती है. जब परचेजिंग पावर कम हो जाती है तो उनको पैसे की ज़्यादा ज़रूरत पड़ती है to buy goods and services in the from the market, right? So they need more money, they demand more money, right? So price के बढ़ने से, inflation के बढ़ने से demand for money भी बढ़ जाती है at a given interest rate in the economy. So we can say that price level is also one of the factors that can determine or that can affect the demand for money in the economy or in the money market. Now higher money demands lead to higher interest rate. So जब हम कहते हैं कि प्राइस लेवल के बढ़ने से मनी डिमांड बढ़ जाती है, तो मनी डिमांड जब बढ़ती है तो हम ये कह सकते हैं हायर मनी डिमांड लीड्स टू ए हायर इंटरेस्ट रेट, एंड द क्वांटिटी, जब इंटरेस्ट रेट बढ़ेगा तो नेचुरली द क्वांटिटी डिमांड फॉर गुड्स एंड सर्विसेज गोज डाउन. इंटरेस्ट रेट बढ़ने से क्या होगा? इन्वेस्टमेंट कम होती है. इन्वेस्टमेंट जब कम होगी तो व्हाट विल हैपन? इन्वेस्टमेंट जब कम होगी तो लोगों की इनकम कम होगी. जब इनकम कम होगी तो डिमांड फॉर गुड्स एंड सर्विसेज कम हो जाएंगी. तो द एंड रिजल्ट ऑफ दिस एनालिसिस इज द negative relationship between the price level and the quantity of goods and services demanded. तो इस एनालिसिस की बेस पे हम ये कह सकते हैं कि ये there is inverse relationship, उल्टा relationship है between the price level and the aggregate demand of goods and services in the economy. तो कैसे हमने ये प्रूव किया? कैसे हमने रिलेट किया क्वांटिटी थ्योरी ऑफ लिक्विडिटी थ्योरी ऑफ प्रेफरेंस को विद एग्रीगेट डिमांड? हमने स्टार्ट किया, हमने ये कहा कि प्राइस जो है is also one of the determinant of aggregate is also one of the determinant of quantity of money demand in the economy or in the money market, and we said that if the price level rises, or if there is an increase in price level in the economy, this increases the quantity demand for money because people need more money to buy our goods and services. जब डिमांड फॉर मनी बढ़ती है तो उसका इफेक्ट क्या होता है? डिमांड फॉर मनी के बढ़ने के साथ इंटरेस्ट रेट इकोनॉमी में बढ़ जाता है. जब इंटरेस्ट रेट बढ़ता है तो व्हाट विल हैपन? मनी डिमांड के बढ़ने से इंटरेस्ट रेट बढ़ता है तो क्या होगा? इंटरेस्ट रेट का इन्वेस्टमेंट के साथ नेगेटिव रिलेशनशिप है, तो इन्वेस्टमेंट कम होना शुरू हो जाती है. इन्वेस्टमेंट जब कम होती है तो इनकम कम होती है, इनकम कम होती है तो डिमांड फॉर गुड्स एंड सर्विसेज कम हो जाती है. तो विद द हेल्प ऑफ दिस एनालिसिस, और फ्रॉम दिस एनालिसिस वी कैन प्रूव और वी कैन से दैट देयर इज इनवर्स रिलेशनशिप बिटवीन द प्राइस लेवल एंड द aggregate demand of goods and services in the economy. We'll try to explain this analysis with the help of the diagrams जो कि आपको सामने नज़र आ रहे हैं. दो डायग्राम्स हैं हमारे पास, एक में is the money market, the other is about the aggregate demand. So we are when we talk about the money market, on y-axis we are measuring this interest rate, on x-axis we are measuring quantity demand for money and supply of money. On the other side aggregate demand में y-axis पे price level है, x-axis पे quantity demand है. On aggregate demand curve we have a price level which is P1. Against P1 we have a certain level of output demanded in the economy, that is Y1. Now suppose if there is an increase, जैसा कि हमने पिछले एनालिसिस में कहा कि प्राइस जो है, तो हमने स्टार्ट ये करना है कि वो ये ओरिजिनल एग्रीगेट डिमांड कर्व बना लिया है इसमें डायग्राम बी में. उसी तरह वी हैव ए मनी मार्केट इज एट इक्विलिब्रियम, एट इनिशियल इक्विलिब्रियम, वेयर vertical supply curve is intersecting the aggregate the money demand curve, which is blue line, MD1. So money market is in equilibrium at R1 with where money demand curve MD1 is intersecting the money supply curve. Now as we said that previously in the previous slide, कहाँ से हमने अपना analysis शुरू किया कि now suppose if there is increase in the price level in the economy, so what will happen? Prices के बढ़ने से क्या होगा? This will increase the demand for money. As we said that price level जब बढ़ता है तो purchasing power लोगों की कम होती है और they need more money, they demand more money. So what will happen to the demand for money curve? The demand for money curve will shift to the rightward in the first diagram. तो red line के साथ जो ये curve है, this is a new demand for money curve, जो कि change है, increase है money demand में because of the increase in price level in the economy. Now this MD2 new money demand curve is intersecting the existing money supply curve at a point which is point, let us say B. Right at point B, what is happening with the increase in money demand or the shift in the money demand curve from MD1 to MD2, there is a change in the interest rate. Interest rate has increased from R1 to R2. तो जब interest rate बढ़ेगा तो what will happen to the आउटपुट की जो डिमांड है क्या होगी? इंटरेस्ट रेट के बढ़ने से इन्वेस्टमेंट कम होती है. इन्वेस्टमेंट जब कम होती है, जो डिमांड फॉर आउटपुट है, या आउटपुट जो है इकोनॉमी में, वो इनकम जो लेवल है, क्वांटिटी ऑफ आउटपुट जो है वो क्या होती है? कम हो जाती है. तो जो जैसा कि आप देखें कि एट P2 the output at B diagram में, diagram B में, with the increase in prices from P1 to P2, output has decreased from Y1 to Y2. So we can say that with the help of this analysis, linking these two markets, one is the money market with the aggregate demand, we can say that we can prove that the price level in the economy in the country is inversely related with the demand of goods and services in the economy, quantity demand of goods and services in the economy. तो दोबारा मैं इस डायग्राम को एक्सप्लेन कर देता हूँ. दो डायग्राम हैं, दो डायग्राम इस स्लाइड पे, ए और बी. ए में हम मनी मार्केट को देख रहे हैं, बी में एग्रीगेट डिमांड कर्व है हमारे पास. एज वी नो दैट, जैसा कि हम पहले बता चुके हैं, प्रूफ कर चुके हैं कि एग्रीगेट डिमांड कर्व इज डाउनवर्ड स्लोपिंग, नेगेटिवली स्लोप है। तो आपने ये ड्रॉ कर लेना है, वाई एक्सिस पे प्राइस लेनी है और ये डिमांड होगी, एंड यू कैन ड्रा द डाउनवर्ड स्लोपिंग डिमांड कर्व, एंड यू कैन, एज वी हैव डिस्कस्ड इन द प्रीवियस स्लाइड, वी हैव गिवन मनी सप्लाई, वर्टिकल मनी का सप्लाई कर्व आपने ड्रा कर लेना है, देन डाउनवर्ड स्लोपिंग मनी डिमांड कर्व, और इनिशियल इक्विलिब्रियम मनी मार्केट में R1 और क्वांटिटी डिमांड फॉर मनी इज गिवन। तो इनिशियली यू हैव टू ड्रॉ द एग्रीगेट डिमांड कर्व भी आपने बना लेना है बी डायग्राम में, और ए डायग्राम में आपने मनी मार्केट का जो इनिशियल इक्विलिब्रियम है, अब इनिशियल इक्विलिब्रियम कहाँ पे है, जहाँ पे डिमांड फॉर मनी और सप्लाई ऑफ मनी दोनों बराबर हैं, दोनों इंटरसेक्ट कर रहे हैं। तो फ्रॉम आफ्टर दिस ड्राइंग द इनिशियल कर्व्स इन बोथ ऑफ द डायग्राम, दोनों डायग्राम में आप इनिशियल कर्व आप ड्रा कर लेंगे। नाउ वी स्टार्ट आवर एनालिसिस। एनालिसिस क्या है, हम देखना चाह रहे हैं कि क्या how we can relate these two markets, and we can say that and we can determine that the aggregate demand curve is downward sloping. We try to link up the money market and try to prove that that the demand for money curve is so aggregate demand is downward sloping. So as we said that we start from the a rise in the price level in the economy. If prices goes up from P1 to P2, so what will happen to the demand for money in the money market? The demand for money goes up. जब demand for money बढ़ती है तो what will happen to the demand for money curve? Naturally, demand for money curve will shift upward, rightward बढ़ने के साथ। तो उसका क्या इफेक्ट होता है इंटरेस्ट रेट पे मनी मार्केट में? डिमांड फॉर मनी के बढ़ने के साथ, चेंज होने के साथ, शिफ्ट होने के साथ, आप देख रहे हैं, आपको नजर आ रहा है डायग्राम में, नाउ दिस न्यू डिमांड फॉर मनी कर्व MD2 इज इंटरसेक्टिंग द मनी सप्लाई कर्व एट पॉइंट B. नाउ व्हाट इज हैपनिंग एट पॉइंट B? पॉइंट E पे अगर B पे अगर आप देखें तो इंटरेस्ट रेट हैज इंक्रीज्ड from R1 to R2. Now what will happen जब इंटरेस्ट रेट बढ़ जाता है तो what will happen to the एग्रीगेट डिमांड कर्व जो है उसके वहाँ पे क्या फ़र्क पड़ेगा? इंटरेस्ट रेट के बढ़ने से, जैसा कि हम जानते हैं इंटरेस्ट रेट का इन्वेस्टमेंट के साथ उल्टा रिलेशनशिप है, इन्वर्स रिलेशनशिप है। जब इंटरेस्ट रेट बढ़ता है तो इन्वेस्टमेंट कम होती है, इन्वेस्टमेंट कम होती है तो आउटपुट कम होगी, इनकम कम होगी, राइट? सो दैट डिक्रीज इन इनकम, फॉल इन इनकम इज रिफ्लेक्टेड इन द एग्रीगेट डिमांड कर्व विद द राइज इन प्राइस, एंड इनकम हैज फॉलन from Y1 to Y2, and we can say that we can prove that from this analysis that with the change in price level, increase in price level, we can say that there is a decrease in the quantity demand of goods and services in the economy, and we can conclude that the demand for aggregate demand curve is always downward slope. Now so we have seen and we have determined that as we said that in the beginning, हम दो पॉलिसीज हमारे पास हैं, जैसे कि हमने कहा मॉनेटरी पॉलिसी एंड फिजिकल पॉलिसी। तो एक साइड अभी हमने देखी कि मॉनेटरी पॉलिसी अभी हम देख रहे हैं कि हाउ मॉनेटरी पॉलिसी कैन अफेक्ट दी एग्रीगेट डिमांड इन द इकानमी, और उसकी एक साइड की हमने अभी बात की कि मनी डिमांड को हमने देखा कि अगर मनी डिमांड में जब चेंज आती है तो दिस कैन आल्टर और चेंज दी aggregate demand or demand of output, demand of goods and services in the economy. Now we see that if there is a change in the money supply, अब हम देखेंगे कि if there is a change in money supply by the federal bank, by the central bank of Pakistan or central bank of the government, so this can also change the aggregate demand. So with the increase, with the Fed can shift the aggregate demand curve when it changes the monetary policy, right? And increase in money supply will shift the money supply curve to the right. Without a change in money demand curve, the interest rate falls. जब interest rate fall करता है तो what will happen? Falling interest rate increase the quantity of goods and services in the economy. तो हमने ये कहा कि एक साइड हमने देखी मॉनेटरी पॉलिसी की कि हमने पिछली डायग्राम में ये देखा कि मनी डिमांड के चेंज होने की वजह से हाउ इट चेंजेस द क्वांटिटी या डिमांड ऑफ गुड्स एंड सर्विसेज इन द इकोनॉमी। अब दूसरी साइड जो मॉनेटरी पॉलिसी की है that is the money supply. By changing the money supply, government can change or shift the aggregate demand of goods and services in the economy. Now suppose if the money supply increases, so what will happen? जब money supply बढ़ती है, interest rate जो है कम हो जाता है. जब interest rate कम होता है, interest rate के कम होने से investment बढ़ती है, investment के बढ़ने से आउटपुट बढ़ती है, आउटपुट और इनकम बढ़ती है, आउटपुट के बढ़ने से डिमांड, क्वांटिटी डिमांड फॉर गुड्स एंड सर्विसेज विल आल्सो गोज अप. सो विल ट्राई टू एक्सप्लेन दिस एनालिसिस विद द हेल्प ऑफ डायग्राम जो कि आपको सामने नजर आ रहा है. अब इस डायग्राम में हमारे पास दो डायग्राम्स हैं स्लाइड्स पे, ए और बी. ए में हम मनी मार्केट शो कर रहे हैं, बी में हम एग्रीगेट डिमांड का ड्रॉ कर रहे हैं. इनिशियली आपने क्या करना है दोनों डायग्राम में, इन डायग्राम ए यू इनिशियली ड्रॉ द इक्विलिब्रियम इन द मनी मार्केट बाय drawing a vertical supply curve and by drawing MD1 money demand curve. So we know that where both these two curves intersect, and both of these two curves are intersecting at points, let us say E. At E we have the initial equilibrium in the money market, and at this equilibrium we have R in one interest rate and some level of money demand and money supply, let us call M0. Now corresponding to this we have aggregate demand curve AD1. So we have a price level and then corresponding to that price level we have a output. Now suppose हमने क्या देखना है, what we are going to analyze in this diagram. Suppose if in the money market, if the Fed or the government increase the money supply in the economy by any of the tool जो कि हमने अभी देखे कि government can use either open market operations or they can use the required reserve ratios, or they can do this by discount rate, right? So any of the factor can be used to change the money supply in the economy. Now suppose if the government increase money supply in the economy, the money supply curve will shift to the rightward, right? तो curve जो है rightward shift हो जाएगा. तो now what is happening in the money market? Money market is now equilibrium at a new point. Let us say it is point D. At point D what is happening? At point D देखें interest rate कम हो गया है from R1 to R2. जब interest rate कम होगा तो what will happen to the investment? Investment बढ़ जाएगी, investment के बढ़ने से output बढ़ेगी और aggregate demand curve shift हो जाएगा towards right side. So when there is a shift in the aggregate demand curve, price level is given, it is the same, but due to change in the money supply in the economy which has in turn affected the interest rate के effect होने से मनी सप्लाई से हमारा क्या इफेक्ट हुआ, इन्वेस्टमेंट पे इफेक्ट हुआ. इन्वेस्टमेंट पे जब इफेक्ट हुआ तो आउटपुट बढ़ गई, आउटपुट के बढ़ने से aggregate demand curve has shifted from AD1 to AD2 in the diagram B. So at the same price level, output level has increased from Y1 to Y2. So we can say that so with increase in output, the demand for goods and services has also increased. So we can say that whenever there is a change in the money supply in the economy, that can alter or change or shift the aggregate demand curve in the economy toward right side or left side. So this is how money supply can affect the equilibrium, can change, bring a change in the aggregate demand of goods and services in the economy. तो हमने दोनों sides को explain किया किस तरह से money demand affect कर सकती है aggregate demand को, और किस तरह से money supply में अगर तब्दीली आए तो how it can change, how it can affect the aggregate demand of goods and services or demand of goods and services in the economy. Now changes in money supply. So what we can conclude that when Fed increases money supply, it lowers the interest rate and increases the quantity of goods and services demanded at a given price level, shifting the aggregate demand curve to the right. So when federal government or central bank contracts the money supply, it raises interest rate, reduces the quantity of goods and services demanded at any given price level, shifted the aggregate demand curve to the left. So we can conclude the previous analysis that if the government increases the money supply, it will lower the interest rate, increases the quantity demand for goods and services at any given price level, and shift the aggregate demand curve to the right. And if the government contracts the money supply, it lowers the interest rate, raises the interest rate, and when the interest rate goes up, it reduces the demand for quantity demand for goods and services, and shifts the aggregate demand curve to the left and reduces the output level in the economy from Y1 to Y2. Now, what is the role of interest rate? Targets in federal policy or the state bank policy? How interest rate can play a role in the by this way the targets in the federal government or by the central policy. Monetary policy can be described either in terms of money supply or in terms of the interest rate. As we know that monetary policy has two important tools, right? And one is the money supply or other is interest rate. So if the government or the Fed adopts monetary policy to offset the fluctuations in the economy, so then they can use either of the tool, either money supply or interest rate in the economy. So changes in monetary policy can be viewed either in terms of the changes in money supply or changes in the interest rate. So we can say that जब भी कभी government monetary policy को use करना चाहती है and they want to offset the changes in the aggregate demand or aggregate supply in the economy, and they want to stabilize the economy, so and by using monetary policy, so it has two options. Either they can bring a change in the interest rate in the economy and then stabilize the economy accordingly, or by changing the money supply in the economy, and then they can bring equilibrium or stability in the economy. A target for the federal fund rate affects the money market equilibrium, which influences aggregate demand. So whenever the government, the target for the federal government is the federal funds rate, federal fund rate, or that the money supply rate affect the money market equilibrium, which influence the aggregate money demand in the economy. So government can adopt monetary policy by using either interest rate or money supply and can bring equilibrium and stabilize the economy by using either of the two. So as we said that government can stabilize the economy or can offset the fluctuations because of the change in demand or change in supply by using monetary and fiscal policy. So we have discussed the one policy, how monetary policy can be used to offset the changes or to offset the fluctuations in the economy by adopting monetary policy, which is the money supply or money demand or interest rate in the economy. अब दूसरी जो पॉलिसी है, we can want to see that how fiscal policy can influence aggregate demand in the economy. अभी तक हमने ये देखा कि monetary policy जो है वो किस तरह से aggregate demand को इफेक्ट कर सकती है, मॉनेटरी पॉलिसी किस तरह से एग्रीगेट डिमांड को इफेक्ट करती है. अभी हम देखेंगे कि किस तरह से फिस्कल पॉलिसी को गवर्नमेंट यूज कर सकती है टू stabilize the economy, or how fiscal policy can affect the aggregate demand in the economy. Now, fiscal policy refers to the government choices regarding the overall level of government purchases or taxes. So, as far as fiscal policy is concerned, fiscal policy has two tools. One is the government expenditures, government purchases, or the taxes or the revenue of the government. So government can use either of the tool, either government spending or taxes to stabilize the economy. Fiscal policy influence savings, investment and growth in the long run. In the short run, fiscal policy primarily affects the aggregate demand. तो जब हम लॉन्ग रन की बात करते हैं तो लॉन्ग रन में फिस्कल पॉलिसी जो है वो इफेक्ट करती है इन्वेस्टमेंट को, सेविंग्स को एंड ग्रोथ को, राइट. अगर हम शॉर्ट रन की बात करें तो शॉर्ट रन में फिस्कल पॉलिसी कैन ओनली इफेक्ट द एग्रीगेट डिमांड इन द इकोनॉमी. तो वी विल सी दैट हाउ the change in either of the tool of fiscal policy or either government expenditure or taxes can affect the fiscal policy, can affect the aggregate demand in the economy in the short run. Now first we look at the changes in government purchases, and we'll see that how changes in government purchases can alter the aggregate demand or aggregate demand of goods and services in the economy. So when policymakers changes the money supply are taxes, the effect of aggregate demand is indirect, right? So if the government want to correct or offset the economic fluctuations with the help of money supply or taxes, the effect is indirect through the spending decisions of the firms or household. When the government alters its own purchases of goods and services, when the government alters its own expenditure, it has a direct effect on the aggregate demand का. तो हमने क्या देखा, हमने ये कहा कि अगर गवर्नमेंट यूज करती है अंडर फिस्कल पॉलिसी टैक्स को यूज करती है एज ए टूल to correct or stabilize the economy, so it has a indirect effect on the aggregate demand through the spending of households and firms. क्योंकि हम देखें जब टैक्स बढ़ता है, टैक्स गवर्नमेंट चेंज करती है, बढ़ाती है, कम या ज़्यादा करती है, तो टैक्स इज इम्पोज्ड ऑन फर्म्स ऑन द प्रोडक्शन ऑफ गुड्स एंड सर्विसेज, राइट? Indirectly that affects the expenditure spending of the households and the firms, right? तो उसके बाद फिर उससे एग्रीगेट डिमांड पे फर्क पड़ता है. अगर गवर्नमेंट डायरेक्टली अपनी परचेजेस के थ्रू, गवर्नमेंट स्पेंडिंग्स के थ्रू इफेक्ट करती है, तो दिस हैज अ डायरेक्ट इफेक्ट ऑन द एग्रीगेट डिमांड कर्व इन द इकोनॉमी. सो देयर आर टू मैक्रो इकोनॉमिक इफेक्ट्स फ्रॉम द चेंज इन गवर्नमेंट परचेजेस. वन इज द मल्टीप्लायर इफेक्ट, द अदर इज द क्राउडिंग इफेक्ट. दो इफेक्ट्स की हम बात करेंगे. Whenever government adopts a policy to change its expenditure, to change its purchases, it has two macroeconomic effects. One is the multiplier effect, the other is the crowding out effect. So we'll explain these two effects of changing in government spending. As जैसा कि मैंने आपको बताया, गवर्नमेंट स्पेंडिंग, गवर्नमेंट परचेज इज वन ऑफ द टूल ऑफ फिस्कल पॉलिसी. और अगर हम ये कहते हैं कि गवर्नमेंट इज अडॉप्टिंग फिस्कल गवर्नमेंट परचेजेस टू करेक्ट और स्टेबलाइज द इकोनॉमी, तो change in government spending has two macroeconomic effects. From one is the multiplier effect, the other is the crowding effect. So we'll see these two effects one by one. First, we try to explain what is the multiplier effect. Now, government purchases are said to have a multiplier effect on aggregate demand. Each dollar spent by the government can raise aggregate demand for goods and services by more than $1. So this sort of effect, when the change in government spending, when the change in demand for goods and services is more than the change in government spending, so that sort of effect is known as the multiplier effect. अगर गवर्नमेंट की स्पेंडिंग $1 बढ़ती है और जो डिमांड फॉर गुड्स एंड सर्विसेज है, जो एग्रीगेट डिमांड है, इज इंक्रीज्ड बाय मोर देन $1, so we can say that this is a multiplier effect. So the multiplier effect refers to the additional shifts in aggregate demand that results with expansionary fiscal policy, increase in income, and thereby increase in consumer spending. So there are multiple shifts in aggregate demand curve with the increase in government spending. जब multiple shifts आती हैं with the change in government purchases, तो multiple shifts की वजह से हम ये कह सकते हैं गवर्नमेंट की स्पेंडिंग परचेजेस तब्दील होने से डिमांड फॉर गुड्स एंड सर्विसेज में बहुत ज़्यादा तब्दीली आती है और मल्टीपल शिफ्ट्स आती हैं एग्रीगेट डिमांड कर्व में. सो दैट इज़ द नोन एज द multiplier effect, and that is because of the expansionary fiscal policy. Government has adopted expansionary fiscal policy. They have increased their purchases, they have increased their spendings, and that in turn increases the income and thereby spending of the consumers in the economy. We can explain this multiplier effect with the help of the diagram on this slide. We are measuring price level on y-axis, measuring quantity of output on x-axis. We have aggregate demand curve AD1. This is the original demand curve. Now suppose, and if there is an increase in government purchases of $20 billion, initially increases aggregate demand by 20 billion, and the new demand curve is AD2. but the multiplier effect can amplify the further shift in aggregate demand curve. Because with the increase in government purchases by 20%, this directly shift the aggregate demand curve by $20 million. उसकी demand उतनी बढ़ जाती है, but of course it is further amplified by increasing the income and thereby spending of the consumer, और aggregate demand curve further shift हो जाता है from AD2 to AD3, right? So this sort of effect of government purchase is known as the multiplier effect. कि अगर गवर्नमेंट की परचेजेस $1 बढ़ती हैं तो जो गवर्नमेंट की जो डिमांड फॉर गुड्स एंड सर्विसेज एग्रीगेट डिमांड है वो मोर देन $1 बढ़ती है. नो विद द इंक्रीज इन $20 billion परचेज ऑफ द गवर्नमेंट देयर इज a 4 times more increase in the spending of purchases of goods and services in the economy. So this is the multiplier effect. जब गवर्नमेंट परचेजेस एक खास परसेंटेज से बढ़ती हैं और अगर डिमांड फॉर गुड्स एंड सर्विसेज उससे ज़्यादा परसेंटेज में बढ़ जाती हैं तो दैट इफेक्ट is known as the multiplier effect, and that effect is because of the expansionary fiscal policy, and which increases the income of the consumers and thereby increase the spending of the consumer on goods and services in the economy. अगली स्लाइड उसी इफेक्ट को दोबारा दिखाया गया है कि किस तरह से जो गवर्नमेंट परचेजेस बढ़ने से multiplier effect होता है on the demand of goods and services in the economy. Now what is the formula to get the factor that the multiplier spending formula for spending multiplier? What is the factor, how we can get that multiplier factor? We can use this formula, multiplier is equal to 1 over 1 minus MC. An important number in this formula, if you see, is the MPC. Now what is MPC? MPC is the marginal propensity to consume, right? So it is the additional change in consumption due to change in income. जब गवर्नमेंट परचेजेस, हम जैसे कि हमने अभी कहा कि गवर्नमेंट परचेजेस के चेंज होने से, बढ़ने से इनकम जो है कंज्यूमर्स की बढ़ जाती है, फर्म्स की बढ़ जाती है, हाउस होल्ड की इनकम बढ़ती है. तो देयर इज अ चेंज इन इनकम, उस चेंज इन इनकम से there is a change in consumption, right? So that is known as the marginal propensity to consume. MPC is equal to delta C over delta Y. मैं आपके लिए फार्मूला लिख देता हूँ कि किस तरह से MPC आप निकाल सकते हैं. MPC can be calculated as MPC is equal to delta C over delta Y. So change in consumption due to change in income. Now it is the fraction of extra income that a household consume rather than save. Now suppose if we have given MC is given to us and that is 3/4, so then the multiplier will be 4, right? So just substitute this value. अगर यहाँ पे आप substitute करें 3/4, if the multiplier is 3/4, तो multiplier is equal to 1 minus 1 3/4. If we simplify this equation, and this will become 1 over 4 minus 1 3 over 1 4. So this will give us 1 or 1 over 4, and this will give us 4. The result is 4. So if MPC is 3/4, then the multiplier will be 4. So in this case, a 20 billion increase in government purchases spending generates 80 billion of increased demand for goods and services. तो हमने देखा कि there is a multiplier effect of change in government spending, which is one of the tool of fiscal policy. तो हमने ये देखा कि if the government adopts expansionary fiscal policy and change government spending, increase government spending, government purchases by $20 billion, so there will be increase in demand of goods and services by $80 million US. So this effect is known as the multiplier effect of expansionary fiscal policy. Now the second effect is the crowding out effect. Now fiscal policy may not affect the economy as strongly as predicted by the multiplier, and increase in government purchases cause the interest rate to rise. हमने जैसा कि कहा fiscal policy may not affect the economy as strongly as predicted by the multiplier. जैसे कि हमने कहा कि अगर $1 इजाफा होता है गवर्नमेंट परचेज में तो एक्सपेंडिचर कहीं उससे ज़्यादा, जो डिमांड फॉर गुड्स एंड सर्विसेज है कहीं ज़्यादा उससे बढ़ जाती हैं. Fiscal policy may not reflect or affect the economy as strong as predicted by the multiplier. An increase in government spending can raise the interest rate in the economy. Interest rate जब बढ़ता है, that reduces investment spending. This reduction in investment spending, this reduction in demand, investment spending, or this reduction in demand that result with the physical expansion raises the interest rate is called crowding out effect. तो हमने क्या कहा कि crowding out effect क्या है? With the increase in government spending, जब हमने ये कहा कि गवर्नमेंट की स्पेंडिंग बढ़ गए हैं तो गवर्नमेंट स्पेंडिंग बढ़ने से इंटरेस्ट रेट जो है इकोनॉमी में बढ़ जाता है. जब इंटरेस्ट रेट बढ़ता है तो इंटरेस्ट रेट के बढ़ने से इट रिड्यूसेस द इन्वेस्टमेंट स्पेंडिंग. जब इन्वेस्टमेंट स्पेंडिंग बढ़ती है, कम होती है, तो दिस रिड्यूसेस द डिमांड फॉर गुड्स एंड सर्विसेज. सो दिस रिडक्शन इन डिमांड ड्यू टू इंक्रीज इन इंटरेस्ट रेट इज नोन एज द क्राउडिंग आउट इफेक्ट. द क्राउडिंग effect tends to dampen the effects of fiscal policy on aggregate demand, right? Instead of amplifying, the crowding out effect dampens, कम करता है the effect of fiscal policy on aggregate demand. और crowding out effect को हम इस डायग्राम के जरिए एक्सप्लेन करते हैं. We'll try to explain how the crowding out effect and dampens the effect of fiscal policy on aggregate demand. तो अगर जैसा कि आपको नज़र आ रहा है, दो डायग्राम हैं, ए और बी. ए में मनी मार्केट है, बी में एग्रीगेट डिमांड कर्व है. मनी मार्केट इज इनिशियली इक्विलिब्रियम एट ए पॉइंट वेयर बोथ ऑफ दीज टू कर्व्स आर इंटरसेक्टिंग ईच अदर, and that is the point, and determines the rate of interest in the money market and quantity demand and quantity supplied. On the right side diagram we have initial aggregate demand AD1. So suppose with the increase in government purchases increases aggregate demand. So हमने जैसे कि कहा कि जब गवर्नमेंट परचेजेस बढ़ाती है तो एग्रीगेट डिमांड बढ़ जाती है, एग्रीगेट डिमांड शिफ्ट हो जाती है फ्रॉम AD1 to AD2 with the help of because of the multiplier effect. तो मल्टीप्लायर इफेक्ट से एग्रीगेट डिमांड स्ट्रेट बढ़ जाती है फ्रॉम AD1 to AD2. Now what will happen? This increases the increase in spending increases money demand. तो जब ये एग्रीगेट डिमांड बढ़ती है तो ऑफ कोर्स मनी डिमांड बढ़ जाएगी. मनी डिमांड कर्व शिफ्ट कर जाता है टुवर्ड्स राइट साइड, और व्हेन मनी डिमांड कर्व शिफ्ट टू द राइट, अगर जैसा कि आपको डायग्राम में नजर आ रहा है, मनी डिमांड कर्व के शिफ्ट होने से इंटरेस्ट रेट बढ़ गया है फ्रॉम R1 to R2. तो जब इंटरेस्ट रेट बढ़ता है तो व्हाट विल हैपन, क्या होगा इकोनॉमी में? इंटरेस्ट रेट के बढ़ने से सेविंग कम हो जाती हैं. जब सेविंग्स कम होती हैं तो क्या होगा? आउटपुट कम होती है, इनकम कम होती है. जब इनकम कम होगी तो एग्रीगेट डिमांड इकोनॉमी में कम हो जाती है, और एग्रीगेट डिमांड कर्व शिफ्ट बैक from AD2 to AD3, and this shift of aggregate demand from AD2 to AD3 is the crowding out effect, right? So crowding out effect is the reduction or fall in demand of goods and services due to the rise in the interest rate, and this is known as the crowding out effect. तो दो इफेक्ट हमने देखे. one is the multiplier effect that amplify the aggregate demand, and then we have seen the crowding out effect that dampen the aggregate demand in the economy. तो यहाँ पे लेक्चर ख़त्म करते हैं आज का. So what we have learned today, so we started to discuss the aggregate demand in terms of fiscal and monetary policy, how fiscal policy and monetary policy can alter or bring a change in the aggregate demand in the economy. तो सबसे पहले हमने have tried to explain this with the help of liquidity theory of preferences. उसके ज़रिए हमने money demand और money supply की बात की, and we have determined the equilibrium in the money market. हमने ये कहा कि शॉर्ट रन में मनी सप्लाई इज गिवन, वी हैव अ वर्टिकल मनी सप्लाई कर्व. उसके बाद हमने ये कहा इंटरेस्ट रेट और मनी डिमांड का नेगेटिव रिलेशनशिप होता है, और वी हैव अ डाउनवर्ड स्लोपिंग मनी डिमांड कर्व. जहाँ पे दोनों ये आपस में बराबर होते हैं, जहाँ पे मनी डिमांड मनी सप्लाई के बराबर होती है, दैट डिटरमिन्स द इक्विलिब्रियम इन द मनी मार्केट एंड इक्विलिब्रियम इन द डिटरमिन्स द इक्विलिब्रियम इंटरेस्ट रेट, इक्विलिब्रियम क्वांटिटी डिमांड एंड सप्लाई ऑफ मनी। उसके बाद हमने इस लिक्विडिटी प्रेफरेंस को रिलेट किया विद दी aggregate demand। हमने ये कहा कि if there is a change or shift in the aggregate money demand or money supply, there is a change in aggregate demand and it affects the demand of goods and services in the economy. So this was the one side। उसके बाद हम this was the monetary policy, how monetary policy can affect the aggregate demand in the economy by using money supply and money demand in the economy। उसके बाद हमने बात की fiscal policy की, the second policy which government can use and can change the aggregate demand of goods and services in the economy। हमने ये देखा कि fiscal policy के दो tools हैं, one is the government spending, the other is taxes। So government can use either of the tool to change the aggregate demand in the economy। So first we have seen the effect of government purchases। If the government changes its purchases, its spending, जी को अगर चेंज करती है तो व्हाट विल हैपन टू द एग्रीगेट डिमांड। तो जब गवर्नमेंट स्पेंडिंग चेंज हुए तो हमने दो तरह के इफेक्ट्स देखे। विद द चेंज इन गवर्नमेंट परचेज इट हैज़ टू मैक्रो इकोनॉमिक इफेक्ट, वन इज द मल्टीप्लायर इफेक्ट, द अदर इज क्राउडिंग आउट इफेक्ट। तो मल्टीप्लायर इफेक्ट क्या है? वेन एवर दिस इज चेंज इन गवर्नमेंट परचेज बाय $1, देयर इज अ मल्टीप्लायर इफेक्ट ऑन द डिमांड ऑफ गुड्स एंड सर्विसेज इन द इकोनॉमी। सो डिमांड जो है कहीं ज़्यादा बढ़ जाती है $1 से, मल्टीप्लायर इफेक्ट होता है और that is known as the multiplier effect। and how we found that multiplier spending effect? हमने ये कहा कि multiplier effect is equal to 1 or 1 minus MPC। MPC is the marginal propensity to consume। अगर हमें marginal propensity to consume given हो तो हम multiplier निकाल सकते हैं। so that's what we have done। and after that the last topic, last thing which we have learned is that the crowding out effect। now crowding out effect basically is the effect that dampen the effect of expansionary fiscal policy। there is increase in aggregate demand from the initial level, but not as much as the change in aggregate demand with the multiplier effect, right? So expansionary fiscal policy reduces demand of goods and services by increasing the interest rate in the economy। तो उसको हमने एक डायग्राम के जरिए एक्सप्लेन किया कि whenever there is a change in the government purchases, there is a change, of course there is an increase in the money demand बढ़ती है तो interest rate बढ़ता है, interest rate बढ़ता है तो investment कम होती है, investment कम होती है तो output कम होती है, तो aggregate demand वापस shift कराती है multiplier effect से towards to a new shifted to a downward, right, a new curve from 82 to 83 जैसा कि हमने explain किया डायग्राम में। और aggregate demand कम हो गई due to the rise in the interest rate in economy, and this is known as the crowding out effect। तो this is all about student today। आज का लेक्चर यहाँ पे ख़त्म करते हैं। till the next time, till the next lecture, Allah Hafiz, see you, God bless us all।